This video is sponsored by NordVPN. Green skyscrapers are an incredibly stupid idea and are nothing but pointless, expensive greenwashing. These idiotic plant scrapers, as they call them, are the ultimate symbol of pretending to be environmentally friendly while doing absolutely nothing to reduce your carbon footprint. They are a way to divert money away from meaningful projects that would actually help the environment. Recently, my senses were assaulted by this forest city project in Liuzhou, China, which then sent me down a rabbit hole of buildings with plants on them. So what is the issue with forest cities and green skyscrapers? The Guardian called them a radical plan to save China from air pollution. And herein lies the first problem. This is not a radical plan, but the ultimate clinging to the status quo. Because newsflash, sticking trees on the buildings of your badly designed city doesn't fix things magically. The architects can talk as much as they want about being an example to the world, but man, what kind of example is it really? In this article, the architect is talking about two proposed green high-rises in the Chinese city of Nanjing. And I'm just like, dude, have you seen Nanjing? For those of you who haven't yet, did they get Dubai to plan their city? This isn't even a city, it's just a jumble of copy-paste high-rises between urban freeways. Actually, this is a perfect parallel to Dubai. Two dictatorships collaborating with real estate giants to put up massive, unsustainable concrete jungles, which is a way to keep their cronies and political allies on payroll. And someone looks at this, the chaotic product of a dictatorship's collaboration with real estate capital, divided by 12-lane urban freeways, and says, what if the buildings had plants on them? So we do see the problem. Putting up green skyscrapers in this environment does not address the massive, underlying systemic issues plaguing the city and the country that produced it. Even on renders of the Nanjing vertical forest, the buildings are on the corner of two 16-lane urban freeways. It's like that urban gondola fever dream I looked at earlier, where they wanted to put up these things because there is no space, but on their own renders, they have two 5-lane roads intersecting directly below. There is more than enough space. Just convert two car lanes into public transit lanes. But since we live in the world of automobile realism, no one dares to touch the car. That would be too radical of a plan, one could say. Now picture yourself sitting at your desk in your green skyscraper apartment. Half the plants have died, there is a rat infestation on all 60 floors because people are throwing out their leftovers on the plants, there's a hawk outside your window tearing apart a pigeon, and state actors are listening in personally on your chats. Well now, thanks to NordVPN, you can keep dictators out of your private life. It can't do anything about the rats or the hawk. NordVPN's virtual private network feature keeps you anonymous on the internet by hiding your physical location and encrypting your personal data. Available both for Android, iOS and PC, NordVPN is the #1 VPN provider on the market. Of course, their flagship feature is the elimination of region blocks. Want to check out that Netflix show to block out the sounds of the pigeon being torn apart as rats fall from the upper floors? Oops, should have moved to the right country. Except, boom, NordVPN to the rescue. NordVPN is also super useful if you travel a lot and connect often to public Wi-Fi networks. If access is limited by time or data, now you can pretend to be someone else and enjoy those limits one more time. NordVPN also has a new feature called MeshNet included for free in the subscription. MeshNet is a safe and secure virtual private network linking multiple devices where you can share files, work on joint projects, or even do secure remote access. And if you want to have a LAN party, but one of your friends can't come down to your place because their door is blocked by rats, you can still play through LAN via MeshNet without having to go through public game servers. To get NordVPN's 2-year plan plus 4 months free, use my link nordvpn.com/adamsomething, which you will also find in the description. Subscribing is risk-free since you also get a 30-day money-back guarantee. Big thanks to NordVPN for sponsoring today's video. So about those forest cities. What if, instead of trying to fix air pollution with them, we fixed the source of that pollution? In most cities, a major cause of air pollution is transportation, aside from industry and power generation. So how about we first try to reduce the car dependency of cities? But that doesn't work, I'm afraid. That would be too much of a radical plan, and we can't have those. It's like buying some high-tech automatic cleaning robot to clean your poop off the living room floor every day. Well, could this not be fixed by you just not shitting on the living room floor? But bro, using the toilet is such a hassle, bro. You have to like go there, open the lid, sit down, then you have to flush. Why use the toilet when there is cutting-edge technology that can scrape your poop off the living room floor? Even on this render of the proposed Liuzhou forest city, there is a 6-lane urban freeway right in front of it. And I get that the city has control over that part, not the architect, but nonetheless, no one should try to sell this whole thing to us as some major eco-revolution. To be fair, the architect does mention that the project's environmental contribution is minuscule. But then why even bother? Instead of buildings buildings with plants on them, how about more bike lanes, more public transit, and less cars for starters? We can also talk about China's energy mix, which is still 56% coal, with them continuing to invest in it. So, the Green Tower gets built, and then the new environmentally conscious tenants turn on their toasters in the morning, so a coal power plant spews out as much CO2 as the entire green facade captures in a day. Another issue is with equal access to green spaces. A green skyscraper is basically a worse version of a residential building with a private park. And so who will live in these buildings? A bunch of regular people? No, these buildings are for the affluent upper middle class. There is nothing fundamentally wrong with putting up an upper scale building for people who can afford to live there. But if you put the greenery on those buildings, instead of greening public spaces, you're locking access to greenery behind a massive paywall. So if you're not affluent upper middle class or above, you get to continue living in the grey concrete jungle, while those who can afford it get to live in the sleek eco-future. There are also issues with how such buildings are built and maintained. You have to lift all the trees and the bushes up with a crane. Okay, that's doable, but what happens if a tree dies on the 60th floor and needs to be replaced? Do you bring out another crane to lift up the new tree, or do you plant a smaller one and wait for it to grow? I guess you could do the second. And what happens if there are high winds up there and a tree breaks, falls down and kills someone on the sidewalk? If a tree grows big and heavy enough and then tips over, it could take part of the facade with it too. What if the building settles and cracks form on the tops the trees are placed in? If roots get into those, they can compromise the building's structure. So now, aside from water leaks and structural cracks, you also need to check for root intrusions in your skyscraper. Also, how will you maintain the greenery to always be in a safe, optimal condition? Do you train every tenant to become a gardener on the side? What if they don't want to mess with gardening? Will management have a specific landscaping company show up and care for each plant platform separately? Look, I've done gardening before, and it can be a ton of work even with simple plants. You need to replant them, water them, prune them, check for infestations and sicknesses, fertilize them. Now imagine you have to care for a big honking garden on the side of a skyscraper. So the landscapers have to rappel down the walls with all their gardening gear, meaning you either need to train landscapers to be industrial climbers, or you need to give industrial climbers landscaping lessons. Also, how do you water the facade? Is there a built-in watering system? I suppose there would have to be. We need to nail the requirements of each plant constantly so they don't get sick and brittle, because that might become a hazard. Imagine a tree getting infected and starting to rot on the inside, which no one notices, so the tree becomes weaker and then gets snapped by a strong wind. What if it falls down and hits and kills someone below? This risk would mean that during storms or windy weather, you would need to close streets under plant scrapers or construct a protective arch or mesh above the sidewalks. Alright, but what if the plants are supposed to be maintained from the inside by regular gardeners who don't need to be industrial climbers? How? Do they schedule with every single tenant a specific time and date where a bunch of gardeners come over, stomp through your apartment once every 2 weeks so they can prune some fucking bush under your window? What if the tenant isn't home for 2 months and can't let in the gardeners, so the plants at their apartment become dangerous and overgrown? Or would the gardeners have some utility access to each plant platform without having to get inside apartments? If that's the case, I hope you're ready for some gardening-themed burglaries. Geez, I'm starting to feel like gardening might not be the easiest and most efficient when done vertically along the sides of a skyscraper. And just hang on, let's take this building as an example. How many trees does this thing have? 46 on the wider side, 14 on the narrower side, and we see 9 trees on the top. So let's say there are 25 there. Now this building is of course 3-dimensional, so it has 2 extra sides we cannot see, which would mean an additional 60 trees. But in this case, let's stick to what we can directly see with our own eyes. So this green high-rise sports an amazing 85 trees in total, approximately. Alright, now hear me out. What if we planted those trees on the fucking ground? Look, right next to it there is a 3-lane road. What if we narrowed it down to a 2-lane road and set up a row of trees between it and the tram line? So here we can fit 20 trees, we can put 10 more behind that building, another 20 fits in front of this building. In fact, we can put 20 more there in a double row, a triple even. If the square is about this wide, then a 3rd row of 20 trees would fit, so it would be behind this building, kinda like this. So we have successfully found space for 90 trees on the ground. That's 5 more than what our green high-rise has. And they're easy to maintain, they give shade to passersby, and aren't threatening to crush someone to death when they tip over. At least not nearly as much as if they tipped over from the 30th floor. Not to mention, trees on the ground can grow much bigger, and you don't have to worry about the roots compromising the building's structure. So there we go. With a little creativity, we have managed to outgreen a green high-rise building. It wasn't even difficult, because green skyscrapers and high-rises are a bullshit non-solution to serious systemic problems. The only reason people like them is because they look good on renders and they have an environmentalist vibe. It's the architectural equivalent of trying to save the planet by buying the apples with the organic sticker on them instead of the regular ones. But if you want greenery on a building nonetheless, do I have an idea for you. A portable, modular, scalable solution called potted plants on your balcony. Otherwise, before trying to put trees on skyscrapers, let's see if we can put some on the ground first instead of traffic lanes and parked cars. Let's also put in more bike lanes and public transit so less people will drive, so the air quality will improve. Not just for the select few who can afford an apartment in a plant scraper, but for everyone living in the city. Thank you for watching, and as always, we won't be fixing systemic issues with flashy renders and greenwashing. If you like my content, please consider supporting me on Patreon or become a channel member here on YouTube, which is essentially the same. And I'll be seeing you next time.